Hello, most divine beings. Hello, hello. Welcome to Naked Hearts, which is a segment of heart activation. And in this, I invite people onto this video cast to be able to share their personal experiences with life. Now, we all have our own unique experiences that have created lenses of how we perceive the world. And by going through and investigating and learning more about people, we can try to understand why people do the things that they do. And really, my focus and my goal, and my intention for this video cast is to really uncover raw, vulnerable heart presence. To have a relatable space with no judgments where we can be like, I understand that. And through sharing our experiences, we're able to open our eyes up to maybe experiences that we haven't seen before. So, with that being said, I invite you to participate in exploring ways that you can understand and relate and open up your perception, open up your mind to new way of seeing things. And thank you so much for tuning in.
How are you doing?
Good.
That's our
How
first
are you?
connection like this. That's cool.
What was that?
This is our first connection like this. It's cool.
I know. We've been doing so much talking, like with the with the voice notes and everything. Now we're face to face. In a way.
Yeah.
I
About as close
love,
as you could get without living together. I know, right?
right? Yeah,
But they
totally.
called out to me this morning and said, "You got to wear me." I'm like, "All right." I'm like, "Which one?" They're like, "We both want to be worn." It's like, "All right, we're doing it. Why not?" I mean, gotta make it light, the shit that we talk about sometimes, you know?
Absolutely. And it's so funny because especially, for us when we have been sharing our stories, just conversing, so many people like ask, or they don't like talking about it because they think it's heavy. It is heavy, but like I talk about it so openly, and I think that's part of the key is just the more open we become about
Yeah.
talking about this stuff, it doesn't seem as terrible or
Right?
awful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the more
So
you heal and the further along you get in life, of course, those feelings definitely change. I mean,
yeah.
but in the beginning, those really gross, icky, disgusting feelings, it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true too. Because that's like so much what society has put on people is like not to feel that, or
Yeah.
that is like something that needs to be fixed. And I feel that, you know, I feel we share a lot of the same things, with a lot of it being we don't need to be fixed. It's just like unbecoming all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So for, and I feel too, like when I first learned or saw you, I was like super intrigued by everything that you post.
Oh,
And
thank you.
just like, so, and how we came together is just really fascinating to me.
Yes.
I don't even honestly totally know, just like, oh, I love your insights. And eventually we just wound up talking. So sharing your story is something that you always wanted to do. And I'm like, so let's do it.
Heck yeah. Right on. I love it.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, you listened to the beginning parts of what I had started with my experience, and just really getting into a lot of how we grew up and how that affects how we interact with other people and our relationships with family, our children, our significant others, how
Yeah.
we view the world.
Yes.
Everything.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will just, allow you to kind of take it from there, like however you want to start off. I'm just so curious, like how you, yeah, just flow with it.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I know we talked about like when people experience any kind of trauma in the childhood, especially around like sexual trauma,
Yeah.
that, we assume that people will, like everybody has the same experience out of that trauma. And that's not always true,
Mhm.
because like I was telling you before, for mine, I never thought I had trauma because
Mhm.
I didn't really know anything. Matter of fact, I didn't even know that so, I mean, like as a teenager, I did have, experiences where, kind of like date rape type experiences. But I never knew that I had childhood experiences until I was pregnant with my first child. I was 17, and the person who happened to be the perpetrator was um, part of my life, actually. And we partied together and had a good time because, he'd buy alcohol and whatever else. And it was really
Mhm.
cool. But then when I got pregnant, all of a suddenly I hated him. I wanted to literally kill him. And I actually tried to stab him.
Mhm.
It was so funny. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I got so pissed at him. I was cutting an orange in the kitchen and he was in the front room, and I just, this rage came over me, and I just tossed the knife and tried to kill him. It went right past his head,
Yeah.
thankfully, and stuck in the wall instead.
Yeah.
But when I when I shared this with my mom, she told me, she goes, well, actually, when you were 9 years old, something happened, but we don't know what it was, because all they recalled and what she told me was that they left me in his care because they had to go do something. And when they got back home, I was locked up in my room and I wouldn't come out and I wouldn't talk to my mom or tell her anything. So
Mhm.
she allowed me that and didn't, try to push anything. And then um, I ended up, I didn't do any counseling from that, but what I did do was I had the opportunity then to talk with the person, which was very good because he did tell me that he had absolutely no recollection of ever doing anything that was harmful to me, but that didn't mean something didn't happen. And he
Mhm.
apologized if he ever had hurt me, which was really cool. So I got to have that.
I'm curious. So my first thing, like when you say that, I'm like, bel do you believe that person that he has no recollection, or?
So that's a good question because that's another thing that has come up. And yes,
Okay.
because I know his childhood and I know that he also had mental illness, which if I were going to classify it under anything, it would probably be along the lines of, what's that called? Sociopathic tendencies,
Yeah.
because I had them too. That
Mhm.
was one of the things that my mom, when I was a little girl, she was given a book because of the way that I was, because I had sociopathic tendencies. My uncle was not the first person I tried to stab.
Mhm.
So when I was a little girl, I was pretty violent at times
Okay.
and very selfish, self-centered. And this lady gave my mom a book on sociopathy. And so my mom realized that I did have those types of tendencies. Well, I know that I'm pretty positive this also happened with my uncle. And that's who it was. It was one of my uncles. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, he definitely had a crazy life, and all my
Mm.
dad's brothers did. Anyways, it so I knew that there was a good chance that he really did not know what
Okay.
it was that happened or had any recollection, because he probably also just kind of, I think people like that just don't really hold on to those types of memories, to be honest.
Disassociate.
Yes, and the
Yeah.
other thing too, so my mom had told me that when he was a child, he did have symptoms of mental issues. I want to say that, so my mom used to work in healthcare, I mean, in mental health. And
Oh,
one of the
okay.
signs as a baby that can show up as mental health in a child or a person is they don't tend to crawl normal. They usually crawl backwards or some other weird things like that.
Like army
And
crawl.
I'm not sure. I just know that
I'm
I
like, that's my son.
remember. Okay, I just remember her saying something about, like, she even talked about how,
Hmm.
and I think all kids experience this, where they really seriously, he would seriously think that nobody could see him if he covered his eyes for the
Oh,
longest time, not just as a baby,
that's
but as
so
a toddler,
fast.
when he started crawling, he only crawled backwards.
Huh. That's so, I wonder what that has to do with, like, well, like if I'm thinking of sociopathic tendencies, right? So you're completely disconnected from reality, basically,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and everything is self-centered and revolves around you. It's
Yeah.
not always like, it's not always the same as the narcissism that's put in with that. When people are older, maybe they experience that, but when younger people have sociopathic tendencies, it's generally more about, I'm going to get what I want, or I'm going to become violent about it in order to get what I want, is what seems to be a theme anyways for a
Okay.
lot that have that when they're younger. From what I've learned, this is just from information that I've learned through my mom, and
Hmm.
it may not even be correct.
Yeah. But it makes, I mean, like, it makes sense. Have you, in human design, have you looked at like any correlations with any of that? Like, you know, sociopathic tendencies or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
Oh, except for, okay, so I can, definitely see like the racing mind
Okay.
in human design, especially when somebody has the 24.
Okay.
And then I would say that astrologically,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it would, be somewhere, whenever I think of those things, I think of the Scorpio archetype, and I
Mhm.
also think of the Leo archetype, because, when we look at,
Yeah.
and also Virgo. Yeah, we would have to bring Virgo in there because
Yeah.
the excuse me,
Yeah.
the Virgo side of it is that there's that critic that's always going on in the back of the mind.
Hmm.
And the Virgo desires perfection that it sees in, for example, like the opposite sign, which is Pisces, but and Pisces, Scorpio
Mm.
wants to merge, Pisces wants to dissolve, but then
Yeah.
there's that perfection that Virgo's trying to attain. And it can drive one nuts, and then it can decompartmentalize in the, cause us to compartmentalize, whatever,
Yep.
put into compartmes everything
There
in our
we go.
mind.
We can make up our own words too. Totally
Exactly.
cool.
I
Yeah.
love it. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm like radical.
I know, like whatever it
Oh,
is.
that's so
Yeah, I'm not
funny.
gonna try either. So, okay.
Compartmentalize.
Yeah, they're put in boxes.
Yes, exactly. And so there's so much separation then whenever the mind is
Hmm.
that way. And when we start healing that though, and those aspects start coming forward, it can be pretty scary, because it's like, um, you're revisiting all that stuff and the emotions that can come from that, even if you don't recall exactly what happened, because like
Yeah.
the emotions that I have felt from an array of emotions that I've felt from different things along these types of traumas has been pretty vast, to be honest,
Mm.
but then on the flip side, because I've become a mom, and I've done stuff with, two with my kids that were horrible. So then, it's like you move from being the victim to being the perpetrator in a
Yeah.
sense. And so the
Mm.
victim has a different set of emotions they have to work through than the perpetrator. And so that's when like guilt and resentment, regret and shame and stuff like that start to come in. And then, yeah, it's just crazy. Those are some of the hardest things to deal with, when you know that you've done wrong, when you've made mistakes. I mean, wrong or right, everything is really one, but still
Mm.
in the 3D world, you know,
Right.
there's the right and wrong. Yeah.
So now, how do you see for yourself and your like experiences that so just like with this, talking with your uncle and him not remembering, but it's still you still holding on to some of those experiences later played out in your life. So how, like, when did you come to realize that because you had unresolved, traumas, that how did you come to the conclusion that that was part of the happening?
Well, I much later, of course, found out that a lot of kids who have experienced any kind of sexual trauma as a child, which I later found out when I was like 40, 41, other incidents. I was very promiscuous as a teenager. I ended up,
Mm.
I think, well, I know before even any kind of sexual trauma, as far as I'm aware, before any sexual trauma, I was already highly sexual, but later found out that a lot of that had to do with the potentially had to do with, not maybe being carried around enough, by my
Mm.
parents type thing, because that initial carrying around is what helps us to also mature. And that was really mind blowing finding out about that. So it was through another friend of mine who had
Mm.
experienced some childhood trauma sexually wise. And she had expressed to me that after that, she really became more sexual, like, promiscuous and stuff. And I was like, I always thought that when kids, especially girls, experience childhood sexual trauma, that they would not want to be touched, that it would be like a rejection type thing. I didn't know that that would make sense of why, going through that experience, that I would be promiscuous. I just figured, like, my dad used to say, I don't want you to be like my mom. And then I ended up turning out like her because she was highly sexual.
Hmm.
But then, she probably was molested as a child. She's passed on since. So of course, I wouldn't be able to talk to her, but it just made so much sense. So now now I have the understanding that some end up becoming more sexually promiscuous in whatever way that looks, even if it's through excessive masturbation. It doesn't even have to be excessive, but through masturbation or through actual sex, you still become more highly turned on.
Hmm.
There it is. You end up becoming turned on more easily, maybe. And then on top of that, for somebody who may just genetically have that extra dose from family, my great grandma was like, we have a curse of sexual, people being attracted to us sexually. Well, coming into human design, I have not looked at her chart, that one specific one's chart, and
Okay.
I'm gonna be looking at that at some point, because in human design, the fifth line, which I have in the body,
Mm.
is the seductor. We seduce
Oh.
people unconsciously. Our body's like, come here, you want to have sex with me. I mean, I've literally had men approach me and be like, I don't know what it is, but I have to have sex with you. And I'm just like, what? Seriously? Or like, I was just questioned this the other day. Somebody somebody that knew me where I raised my kids. I was older, and so they didn't grow up with me as a teenager. Um, had told my son that I was really flirty with the guys, big time flirty. And so that was one of the things his dad was like, yeah, your mom, he's like, Mom, did you cheat on my dad? I mean, because I'm hearing that you were super flirty and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I was a social butterfly. I get along with men and guys so much better. And of course, I'm touchy, lovey. I like to hug people. And I only had guy friends, except for one friend that was a girl at that time, because we were in a new town and all my friends were my brother's friends. And we partied and had fun, and we just were all, I just was the extrovert, happy go lucky, type person, social butterfly. It wasn't that I was sleeping around, because at that time I was celibate. So no, I wasn't sleeping around. After I got pregnant with my daughter at 17, I decided to become celibate.
How long were you celibate for?
Let's see, that's a good question. So 17, 18, 19, 20, 3 years.
Okay.
It was horrible, it was hard. But yeah, it was. I couldn't do it again. I mean, there's just no way. I wouldn't do that to myself. But yeah, 3 years, and then became uncelibate, and then within a summer I got pregnant again.
Yeah.
And then all those feelings came back again.
Yeah. So I was just going to ask you, so what did you find to be a benefit going celibate? Like, and what drove you to become like celibate? Like, what was the, yeah.
Oh, the whole Christianity thing.
Okay. Oh,
that was it. That's it.
Okay.
Just that. There's no other reason for me to be celibate at all. I was trying to be a good Christian.
Right. Because living in sin.
Yeah, I was living in sin. I was drinking. I was doing drugs. I was partying. I was having sex. And yeah, so then I got pregnant and I had to wean off drugs. Well, I didn't wean off. Actually, it was cool because I had visions and dreams that helped me to get over that addiction and to quit drinking, and then stop having sex.
What kind of dreams did you have?
I had dreams of snorting coke and having fun and partying.
Also, like they were okay. That's fascinating, because I was like, oh, she had like prophets or angels coming to her.
Oh, no. I had to finish out my snorting coke and.
So you were okay. Got you. So you had vicariously lived that out in your dream world to be able to have it in your 3D experience. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it was cool. It worked. My mom was like, the whole time, like I would do AA and NA throughout my teenage years. And I'd tell my mom, I need to go to rehab. And she's like, I am not sending you to rehab just so you can make friends with better drugs and better parties and all that kind of stuff. She was so funny.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, and this is a whole nother topic that we can get into, but 12 steps, we've discussed this, and there's a lot of different views on that, which, I could go very much into that. I'm not going to, though. So, and that is also why I find your story like extra interesting, because so for that, those didn't resonate for you. And also, like living your experiment or your design, or learning your human design. Do you feel that has helped you do you feel that
helped me get back to who I am? Because so here's what happened so as a teenager, I was fully living my design. I was doing what I wanted to do, what felt good to me. I was living by my own convictions. I was a party girl, fuck off everybody else, because I'm doing me. And that was it. And also at the same time, though, I was counseling other people. Isn't that funny?
I think we have a
Yeah.
tendency to do that.
Yeah.
Like, yes.
Right. So, um, anyways, I was living my design during that time, and I saw that, and it was really cool because
Mm,
it helped me to get back to there. So when I got pregnant,
mm,
what I did was I decided to do what my dad wanted me to do. I decided to give away my power and be the
mm.
good little girl, and okay, now I'll behave and do good and this and that. And it ended up really fucking me off. And I encourage everybody to never give away their power, because what happened for me, so in human design, so what's really wild. Later, I found out from another guy who happens to be a teacher in human design over in Italy or Germany, but around that area.
Mhm.
And he sent me a thing on the channel 3457, which is what I have. One of the channels that I have is part of the integration circuit, and I have all
Okay.
4 integration channels. And what he told me that he has noticed is that this channel, when we give away our power, when we don't do what it is that we are prompted to do for ourselves, that and we shut that off, that it can actually, in some cases, lead to cancer. And, it leads to
That's
illness.
interesting.
I can say that for sure, because this is what happened to me when
Mm,
I gave away my power and I stopped listening to my own intuition, because that's part of responding to our intuition. Um, that's within a 10-year period, I ended up being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and then ended up on disability and a bunch of prescription drugs that were a lot of fun. Um, go from one drug to narcotics. I ended up getting married twice. Um, my second marriage was the one that I gave away the most in my power. I
mm.
had a feeling that there was something not right, something very not right. And I tried to get an annulment. My decision was, I'm getting an annulment, because it was soon enough after the marriage happened, after our wedding. And I told my parents, and my parents said, no, we're going to work this out.
Oh,
I'm a third line. Third line stay home a lot more, I think. I think they need more of that time with their parents until their first Saturn return. But a lot of parents are like, oh my God, will you just fricking leave already? I mean, my 29-year-old son, or 28-year-old son lives with us. He's a 3-6. I let him live with us because he's a third line, triple third line at that. I'm a 3-5, he's a 3-6. The 6 plays out the 3-3. So,
okay.
until the first Saturn return. And he's finally finished his experimenting with all these drugs and being the coke addict and stuff, and straightening up and cleaning himself up, and enough to where he could actually work,
Mm.
in a way where he's making good money now, and plans on moving out. And we're like thrilled, because we'd like to have our own place back. But so I get where my parents were coming from. And especially because my mom and my dad are non-sacral beings. They do have energy centers, but one is a manifester and the other one is a projector, both emotionally defined. And
Mm.
I'm undefined. My brother's undefined. Oh my God, so funny. So, and all 3 of my kids are defined emotionally. So the cacophony I went through with all their emotions when I was going through my second divorce, it was it was a tsunami. I lived in
Mm.
a tsunami. It was horrific. Let's just put it that way. But that's a whole different story on another day. But the
Mm.
coming back to, is so important to live how your energy best functions. And if that is, like mine is splenic, and in the moment it's about me, I'm fully defined, a single definition. It's about my experiences, what feels good to me, and following my own conviction. And, going with my own rhythm and flow.
Mm-hmm.
When we stop doing that, we give away our power, all kinds of havoc can wreak on our body. Like I said, I ended up getting sick because I ended up staying in that marriage. And lo and behold, 7 years later, come to find out the whole thing that I intuited, the whole time I had a feeling something bad was happening. But everybody was saying, oh, no, everything's good. Nothing's happening. Yeah, and I found out that something was happening. Then I find out the following year, after I found out something was happening, that this something was happening since the beginning of my marriage.
So, okay. So you felt that almost right away. You felt
Yeah.
something was off almost right away. What made you continue going through with that?
I know why. Okay, so this is going back to the childhood trauma and how it shapes us through our life. I wanted desperately to be loved. I desperately wanted to be in a relationship. Part of that's because I love to have sex. And as a Christian, you have to be married
Mm,
in order to have sex without it being a sin.
yeah.
So all that
Mm,
conditioning,
wow.
I
Oh,
wanted to stay in that marriage. I didn't want to lose it. And so we start questioning because mom and dad aren't seeing signs. So I must be not feeling correctly my intuition. And so we
ex-
stomp it away, we hide it, and we just continue going on with life. And we just ignore any of those signs that may be coming up because we're drinking and we're having fun anyways. And most of the time, everything is hunky dory. Yeah. So that definitely, from the conditioning. But I do want to say that my parents did not raise me Christian. So it's not from their conditioning at that point, not from whenever I was young. My parents didn't become Christian until I was right before I turned 11. And
okay.
then my parents are the pendulum swingers.
Oh,
Woo! So they went from hippie party, let's have fun, listen to all kinds of music and stuff like that, to we're burning albums, we're getting rid of albums, we're burning books. We're not my mom, my dad, more so than anything. My mom's more like, you guys are fools for doing that stuff, but whatever, I'll stay back here while you guys do that stupid crap. Yeah, I burnt a lot of stuff, even things that I regret that I had from childhood burning. Yeah,
yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, that's really sad. To
Yeah, it
think
is my unicorns. I burnt my unicorns. I
wow,
could
like
cry.
how like symbolic though is that,
Right.
like burning your
Fundamental
innocence.
Christian, right? Being a
Yes.
fundamental Christian, though, they are crazy. I know
That,
I can say that because I've been there. I was
mm,
all the hellfire and brimstone type Christian. And it's so amazing and wild looking back on that and seeing where I've changed. But going through the change was the scariest thing I ever went through because
mm,
you think, your mind's going, oh my God, we're going to die. We're going to burn in hell. We're worshiping the devil.
yeah.
When you're moving from believing that stuff to knowing that there's actually something much more vast than one little God with a little culture of barbaric peoples that, raping, killing, and pillaging, and to a much broader sense of a more benevolent, unconditionally loving source that there is, doesn't
Mm,
look at anything outside of unconditional love, which means no matter what, like we are
mm,
with our children, when we still love them no matter what they go through. And I'm sure there are some parents out there that maybe they cannot. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that all parents are that way. But in
mhm,
general, I have met, and even myself being a parent and my parents being parents,
mm.
that love that we have for our kids, no matter what they've done, it doesn't generally die.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. And I mean, while you're talking, I'm thinking of all these, like, Jeffrey Dahmer and Ed
Yeah, me
Gein
too. I was thinking the same thing. I love it. I was thinking of the Manson dude.
Oh yeah.
His picture came right up in my head, and I'm like, oh yeah, and Jim Jones and the guy on a punch.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because it's true though, like because I love watching all those documentaries.
Yeah,
But like the parents, the moms especially, are there, still
they're
there's
usually
still their
unconditionally loving
son,
their sons. Yes,
yeah, for
exactly. And
sure.
there's such a different relationship between a mother and her son in
Mhm.
general, especially if they had that opportunity to bond
Yeah.
young. Yeah, I understand though that some of us did not get to bond with our children for whatever reason. And so it's gonna maybe look a little different. I've gotten to experience different bonding experiences with each of my kids. So I've been blessed actually to be able to have that, so that it's more, I can relate more with other mothers who may be having different bonding issues with their kids, which is
Mm.
really cool. So some moms don't even get to initially bond because their children, maybe something happened to either, and they have to be separated from the get-go for a while.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like I remember when I was, and maybe you remember this with your children, like when my mom had me, she was like, oh, breastfeeding back then was like not even really a thing, or
Right?
it was more formula, like people were
Yeah.
pushing formula. So the connection that like I experienced is very different than people probably who were being
Nurse,
nursed.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely,
So,
yeah, and it's wild. So even beyond that, like I do believe my mom did nurse us for the first couple or 3 months, maybe, and
mm,
then of course not after that. But I can say that I got to learn of my very first and traumatic experience as a baby. My mom shared this with me a few years ago, and I did some work around it. It was really fascinating. So, my mom and I were snuggling in bed, um, and she had the covers over us. And I was just maybe a month or two within the first 3 months. And my dad came in, and he freaked. She said that he ripped the covers back and yelled at my mom, "What are you trying to do? Are you trying to kill Denise?" Could you imagine the tragedy a child would experience and then never getting to experience that closeness with mom after that because of
oh,
that? I mean,
wow.
crazy stuff, that a lot of our parents may have experienced because they were inexperienced or didn't have parents that could share them. Now, I got
Mm,
lucky in
mhm,
that I did get to breastfeed all three of my kids.
mhm,
My first one, I got to breastfeed up to 2 years. And then the other two was shorter because my third one was 1 year, but he had a lot of issues. And then my middle child was the easiest, and he got to breastfeed for 9 months. But because of what transpired during my second divorce, well, actually, during both my first two marriages, and the divorce after the second one was so traumatic for my kids that even so, it still ended up they still ended up having traumas and different things. My daughter, it was very codependent, and that's something that she's had to work on for herself,
mhm,
codependency. And she also has the open spleen.
mm,
And so when she was sharing with my oldest son, her brother, about from her codependency book, he related a lot to that. But it makes sense too because of the fact that he also has that open spleen. Now, my youngest son, he has a defined spleen, and he has that same channel that I do, the 57 to the 34.
mhm,
But he's just going through, of course, a way different experience when it comes to around like codependency. And I think codependency tends to play in families. Seems
Oh,
to be almost like a familial thing, because my mom was
yeah.
the same way. She was very codependent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
wild.
It is, and I feel too that the two, it goes hand in hand with addiction and
Yes,
trauma,
exactly. That's why I brought
Yeah.
it up, and that's why they have those issues.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm seeing that I have a timer for we have like a minute and 30 seconds left
Okay,
right
let's wrap
here.
this part up.
Yeah, should we do that? And then do you
Yeah,
want to I'll send you
we can
another
do
link.
another one if you want. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
totally. Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so awesome. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, the codependency thing, because I do think that's super important, and
It
also with
is.
like how that plays out with sexual addictions too,
Yes, I
because
agree, because that is exactly what happens. And you
yeah,
should, I mean, I'm going to suggest doing like two parts, part one and part two, so
yep.
that they're shorter clips. Okay, cool. Yes, so codependency is absolutely it does absolutely come from childhood trauma in
Yeah.
any way, shape, or form. And, you know, because codependency, a part of that too is when the victim is codependent on the perpetrator, and that's kind of
Yeah.
and that is what happened to my daughter, with her perpetrator and the situation around it. She loved him. So of course, she never told me. Apparently, when she was really little, she said she did come to me while I was asleep and
Mm-hmm.
tried to say something, but I was really blown away. She never said anything to my parents, because I'm like the surrogate mom,
Mm-hmm.
and my daughter is like my parents' daughter. And so it's really kind of wild. My daughter and I have a mother-child relation, mother-daughter relationship, but we also have a not quite sister, but a mother-daughter that shares the same mom and dad. So
I,
my parents are her parents.
I that's I mean, I remember you shared that you could relate to my mom too, because
Yeah.
of that's how I viewed my mom and I growing up, that it was more sister like than it was mother and daughter. And
Mhm.
so and what I remember my mom always saying is like, when I had you, like I felt like I finally did something right in my mother's eyes. She was like,
Oh,
so she's like, so I just let her have her fun with you. And so I don't know if you had that type. It doesn't sound like you had that type of relationship with your mom, though, like that, your mom wasn't critical or,
yeah, no, my mom, she was pretty cool for the most part. There have been later times where we've had our issues, but as a teenager, I mean, my mom's pretty passive, and so she just does
hmm,
her best and what she could do. Um, and she always was very loving to us and everything because of her own relationship with my dad. And so when I got pregnant, at first, my mom was like, she talked to me about abortion. That was a no-go. I'm like, absolutely not. And then she talked to me about adoption. And then when she finally told my dad, what she thought he was going to freak out, he actually got excited and said, no way, we're keeping the child. And my mom was like, I'm sure she was like, yes, I finally get the daughter that I've always wanted. And, she would tell me, so her and my daughter bonded while I was pregnant. So she would come home and my daughter would get all excited in the belly, and my mom would be like, Grandma's home. And her song was the song Jim Beam to the rescue.
can you sing
Jim
it?
Dean or something like that. Jim Dean to the rescue, Jim Dean to the rescue. So my mom's song was Grandma to the rescue. So she was always right there and helpful and stuff. And
Hmm.
so her and my daughter bonded first. before me and my daughter bonded, and we did bond, of course, but my daughter was the little girl my mom always wanted. And so it was really kind of cool that she got to experience that for herself. And then my son, my second child out of wedlock, he bonded with my dad. I mean, me and him bonded very close at first. My dad doesn't really like kids until they're about 3. So from 3 on, or maybe even 2, the age of 2 on, him and my son bonded. They were like together all the time, 2 peas in a pod, had so much fun, but then they've had their falling out much later because my dad's
Oh,
the type of dad, and I love him to death. He's this way still as a grandpa. He wants to tell everybody how to live their life. And his way is the correct way.
of course.
I get it. I'm just like my dad. I could tell you exactly. I mean, I have people all the time. So what do you think I should do? Well, you don't really want to know what I think you should do, but what you really should do is not say should, and you would be best to go on your own inner authority. You need to sit with whatever it is and make the decision for yourself, because I cannot make your decisions for you. Now, doesn't mean that I could not totally step into a whole guru type scenario and have my own ashram and all the people that I tell what to do and all that kind of stuff. I could totally do that. Totally do that. Matter of fact, my husband and I are watching the Umbrella Academy.
Oh,
And we're really enjoying it. And I just love, what's his name? His name slipped my mind. The groomer, the one who ends up getting placed.
Klaus.
Yes, Klaus. And it's just so funny. Like when he finally goes to the ashram and he tells the people, he's like, okay, I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud. And it's like, he's telling Ben, I tried. They won't listen to me. Now they think they're a fraud. And they're just, it's so funny.
I know and I'm like, of course, Klaus would be like, he's my favorite in that one because I mean, I relate to so much of him.
Me too. You know why he's my favorite?
Why?
He is the epitome of the archetype of Pisces, Neptune, and Scorpio. And I am so very Neptunian.
Yeah.
It's not even funny. It's just like, I'll just merge with everybody. Just let me do my thing. You know, you could come to me and I'll bless you and I'll help you to dissolve all your crap. And no, I'm kidding, you know, but I really relate to it. You know, I really relate to that. And then, so I've been picking out the different archetypes, you know, with that show, like, what's his name? Diego. Total Aries, Mars, first house archetype. Totally. I mean, it just cracks me up, you know.
Yeah, the emperor type of emperor, but in a distorted way.
Okay, not emperor, but the immature Martian.
And then because this is fascinating how they also have Ellen Page, oh my gosh, Victor is now, or am I getting, you know, Ellen Page, she's the young one who is able to destroy everything. She has a transition. Vanya, yes.
Vanya. I was gonna say, I don't know who Ellen Page is, but Vanya,
Yes. She have you made it through the 3rd season?
No, I haven't started the 3rd season. We're wrapping up the end of the 2nd season. But when I saw the previews for the 3rd season, I'm like, oh my God, it looks so freaking badass. You can still share. You won't spoil anything.
No, well, she does a transition from Vanya to, I think it's Victor, you know, and so
nice. Right on.
So that's a fun thing to have. I think, you know, the first, I think, transition from like a feminine to a masculine in that type, I think is very cool. But I was just thinking,
or from the masculine to the feminine, like myself, for example, you know, because coming back to human design. For example, looking at the my human design, all the integration channels are, I would say, more masculine in nature, and those are all conscious for me. But my design is purely feminine in the sense that it's, projector. It's just two channels from the spleen to the throat to the G. And it's a more receptive, I have that 3313, which is very feminine in nature. And then the 1646, which also is very feminine in nature. But also taking it to the astrology, having the archetype of Capricorn, having my sun and Venus there. So Capricorn is feminine. However, when we're looking at the Capricorn and Cancer 4th and 10th house axis, we're looking at the male and female, the gender roles. So like in evolutionary astrology, which is what I study, when a person has their nodes or other planets, especially personal planets in either or both of those signs, it generally indicates some kind of gender transition, whether it's that they were the opposite sex in the last life and are now the other sex in this life, and they relate more to the past sex. And I've seen this in everybody I've worked with so far on this level. It has literally been truth. And I know for me it is. So I don't have anything in Cancer. I just have the two planets. And I'm talking, this is what's really wild. In Capricorn, my sun is at 0 degrees, so at the very beginning. And my Venus is at the very end at 29 degrees. And there's absolutely nothing in the middle. My 8th house is in the middle of those two things, which is so funny, so that's intercepted within that sign. And I know for a fact I was a dude in my last lifetime. I know for a fact because I wanted to be a guy. I hated being a female whenever I was growing up. I didn't like it at all. And every person I've talked to, no matter how young their child is, if I'm looking at a child's chart or how old the person is, when they have any of those archetypes playing out, and I mention the different ways that it could play out, it's spot on. Because with a 11-year-old little girl, I shared with her mom that when I was a teenager, I hated having to sit down to pee. I wanted to be able to stand up and pee, like guys. And she said, that is so funny you brought that up, because my daughter stands to pee because she hates having to sit. She relates more to guys. And you wonder why I'm so flirty with guys. It's not really being flirty. I'm just so.
You're just like,
I get away. Yeah. When I was growing up, I loved to drink. I loved to burp. I loved to be loud. I loved, sports. I loved frickin' whatever. I wasn't into girly things. I didn't wear dresses and all that kind of stuff. I had my combat boots, my army pants or slit up jeans, and my Metallica t-shirt, and my mohawk. I mean, that's kind of how I was when I was a teenager. I mean, I
you had a mohawk recently. Oh, that's
so. Oh, yes, I did. And I had short hair. I didn't have long hair. I didn't have long hair until I was, in my early 20s, actually. So funny. But yeah, I had a mohawk for a while there. My mom shaved my sides and stuff, but I usually wore it over. I didn't have really the means to stick it up, but yeah.
So fun fact, egg whites are the best way to have spiky hair. Just
nice. Egg whites. That makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and I joke around that. So I have absolutely no tattoos.
I don't either.
You really don't?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Although I love tattoos. My husband is tattooed, and it's funny because I love tattoos and I so desire to have tattoos. But had I gotten tattoos as, a teenager, I would have a big anarchy sign on my back, number one. I was a total anarchist. And that's a third line thing. That's what's amazing.
Yeah.
We're the anarchists that go in and take a system and strip it the fuck down and then rebuild.
And
yeah.
And
that's what I do with human design.
I know that's exactly that's what I do with people's stories,
Yes.
It's just like strip that get to the core of it. So
Yeah.
so that's so funny because you have a whole, and this comes back to both of how you interpret that, because you, as astrologically, and this is also really cool because my next conversation is with somebody who has transition, who is born Capricorn.
Oh, sweet. I'm
Yes.
telling you, this stuff is for real.
I know. That's why I'm like, holy shit. But so, and I also though go into so you bring up astrology with, and being part of the guys and everything like that. And I see that as like, okay, for me, because I was always part of the guys too. I always felt more comfortable around guys. And everybody that I've worked with who has had abuse and addiction issues has always said the same thing. I don't get along with girls, they're catty or whatever, and same thing with guys. I love being around guys. They just make me feel more comfortable. I see this though as also a way to get our needs met from when we we have been gotten our needs met.
Yeah, I didn't get attention from my dad that I needed, and I needed that from other men. And that's where the addiction to love comes in.
Yes.
And that's why I couldn't relate to, the human design.
Yeah.
Generally, a person who has the defined G center does not have that issue, but somebody with an open G is always trying to find love, right? And so when I look at my Vedic astrology, so I mean, when I look at my Vedic human design, because I actually started in Vedic astrology.
Okay.
So
I
when I look at my Vedic human design, I have an open G. And I'm like, oh my God, like I so relate. I have the 2-4 profile. I totally relate to the 2-4 profile. Matter of fact, the 3-5 isn't supposed to get along with the 2-4. I'm married to a 2-4. We get along just fine. Well, for the most part. So I'm starting to see the subtle nuances of adding that chart. And I'm going to be talking about that here soon. I'm really excited.
That is exciting. That's super.
But yes, so the man, the not having that male, the attention that we need from the father figure, the Saturn figure, as most people, or some people put it to Saturn, some people put it to the sun. And I've been looking at that in my own experience. And I can honestly say for me that my sun would represent my dad more than my Saturn in my chart. And that's okay. That's the cool part. In evolutionary astrology, it's Saturn that represents the dad. Okay. And when I first explored that, I was just like, okay, it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. And I had to really sit with that and just be okay with, okay, the truth of it is my sun represents my dad in Capricorn, and my moon totally represents my mom in Pisces. My mom is so Piscean like, and my dad is so Capricornian like, it's not even funny. And my dad's a Leo, and I have my South Node in Leo, and my mom is a Sagittarius, which is how I grew up. That I was a Sagittarius, but I'm not. Yeah. Although I have a lot of planets in Sagittarius, so it's all good.
Yeah. That is so fascinating. How do you see your children? Like, how do you, I wonder, what is your daughter and your sons?
Okay, so you mean human design wise, astrology wise, or both combination?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, both.
Okay, so it's funny because both my dad and my daughter are 2-4s.
Okay.
And my daughter, though, is a generator. And then my oldest son is a 3-6 manifester, emotional manifester. And all of them are emotional. And then my youngest son, he's a 2-5. And he is a generator. So the 2-5, I think I can see how rough it is for a 2-5. I got to witness, and he has a triple split. So it's like kind of crazy at times. So for him, it's like he wants to be around people at times, but then he's pushing them away. So it's like consciously, it's like, will you please go away? But the body's going, come here, I want to be with you, get over here. I want to be with you. And my daughter, she, and my son, all their stuff plays out naturally. And, you know, as far as astrologically goes, my daughter's a Taurus sun. My son is a Gemini sun, and my youngest son is a Libra sun. And he
Hmm.
says that his Libra-ness is why he likes to have sex.
Okay.
I thought that was funny. I was like, hey, right on.
I'm like, I see that.
Yeah. Two of my kids were born with the generation that have Pluto and Scorpio.
Oh
These
yeah.
kids have all gone through some shit.
Yeah.
And then the transformation that some of them go through, it's been like a death and rebirth for them. And
Yeah.
that's what's happening. And then my youngest one, though, has Pluto in Sagittarius. And the reason why I bring up Pluto, though, is because of the fact that Pluto in evolutionary astrology shows like the soul group that we come in with,
Mhm.
and from where we're from, so whatever house it's in will kind of show the dynamics of what we're used to,
Mm,
what's comfortable along with that South Node. So like for me, I can say for me being South Node and Leo, I was used to having the attention,
you're right.
I wanted the attention. So all through my young life, I just screamed for attention all the time and validation. I drove my parents nuts.
I so okay, yeah, um that is so fascinating too, because those roles all play out. So how do you, like, I think of your son too, the Libra, who, so he is the one that's living with you as well, right?
No, he's younger and he lives on his own with a roommate.
Okay. 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 So I was just thinking, like, so he likes to have sex all the time. Does he have like stuff? How do you
Yeah, say that again. Repeat that first part again.
Okay, your Libra son,
Uh-huh.
you said that that's why he likes to have sex all the time, where
Oh
he's
yeah,
saying
yeah,
that. So
yes.
is always looking for love or looking for that connection to.
That's a good question. He doesn't have I think he has an open G if I remember correctly. And I don't think he's looking for love so much as it is, well, he kind of wants that 2-5-ness. That 2-5-ness, it's like they want that, but a part of them also wants to be alone.
Mm,
And unfortunately, because right now he's more in that alcoholism phase,
right.
that he's not, I mean, like the last girlfriend he had, well, the first girlfriend that he really, well, first, but I mean, the one that he had in college that he regrets not having now, he pushed her away.
Yeah.
And then this more recent girlfriend that he had, he's just like, she was way beyond alcoholic for him, and it was just too much. But generally, he just like, he'll just have sex with somebody and then that be it. But he does kind of desire to have a more meaningful relationship. But it's really hard to have a meaningful relationship when you're messed up yourself as it is. I think it's a much easier when you can have a more meaningful relationship with yourself first and then be able to, enjoy a relationship so much better, because then you're not bringing all your baggage in with it, or the expectations of what you think you need from the other
Yeah.
to fulfill your life. And that's where that was my thing. I
Hmm.
expected to have a partner that would do the things that I wanted them to do to fulfill those areas that I needed help in. I needed help raising my kids. I couldn't do it on my own. I'm a very selfish person. I mean, I can look back now and see these things. My youngest son, all my kids will tell you, she should have never been a mom, and it's okay. I mean, I can sit with that and be like, yeah, I probably would have done better not ever having any kids. However, life said, hey, these kids are important and are needed during this time, and they're going to come forth, whether I think I should be a parent or they or anybody else or not. I was a very fun mom when my kids were younger, and I was
Mm.
more naive and just happy-go-lucky and all that kind of stuff. But when the shit hit the fan, and at that time my parents were living out of state, whereas they'd always been there for me before,
Mm.
I did not have the tools to really do what needed to be done. And I would say that I was failed by the system too, because
Mm.
we were all in counseling, and then I don't know what happened. It just all stopped. But I was in a small town. I mean, I knew people, but nobody was that I knew that really could be available in there. And even the church just dropped out, you know?
Yeah.
And so I could see where there were a lot of those types of things that could have been implemented and that would have been so much more beneficial for me and my children for what we were going through than what ended up transpiring instead. But I was selfish, and I chased love, and I left my kids. I totally abandoned them with other people and stuff like that. And I didn't understand from where they were coming, because I mean, in coming into human design, I have such a better understanding of why, because of, I mean, I had that open solar plexus. So I'm taking in what I think are mine emotion wise, but they weren't.
Mm.
They were my kids. They were my kids' traumas. And I had no idea how to deal with that. When
Yeah.
you're not equipped emotionally and maturity wise, because your parents pretty much always was there for you, and they did their best with what they knew, but they cleaned up a lot of the messes without really training you so much
Yeah.
in some
Yeah.
of the more real life stuff. It's hard, to know what to do in hindsight. Man, anybody that I come across that is going through the same thing, I do my best to encourage them to, be there for them if it's meant to be for me to be there for them in a way that benefits them and is not detrimental. I encourage people to tap into resources that are local for them and to continue on it. Don't give up, because it's so hard being a parent, and the kids have no idea. We have no idea at all. And the parents have no idea until they do. And a lot of times things get fucked up in the interim. And
And
yeah,
I mean, basically, yeah, that's like, and I feel like you had expressed when you were pregnant with your daughter, and for me too, it wasn't until I became pregnant that I recognized I had trauma that I hadn't dealt
yeah, you
with.
too then. Hell
Yeah.
yeah.
So it was, yeah. And I feel that happens with a lot of people too.
It
So,
must. And even men, they don't have to have a pregnancy, of course, because they're not ever going to get pregnant, but some other situation can come up in their life that
yeah.
triggers that. And then hopefully somebody they know, like with my mom, knowing what happened, are able to come in and say, the reason why you're feeling this way is because something happened when you were younger that you're not remembering. And then
Yeah.
maybe opening up a chance for healing.
Yeah, I think that like opening up a lot of those doors to our past is, I mean, once you become open to it, it's like you kind of open up the floodgates, but like in ways you don't really know. Because it could,
Right.
like for me, I had to have several breakthroughs or breakdowns, but I keep on coming up to this, what the word you kept using is a selfish, that you were a selfish mom. And I mean, because you were driven by survival, like you were
Yes.
like only
Integration channels, totally driven by survival.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And part of survival is sex, because
Mhm.
what sex offers when, kind of like alcohol or any other drug, it offers a relief, a
Mm.
release, and a bit of joy. a bit of good feeling
Mm-hmm.
through that relief and release at the same time. Because when we're taking a drug or drinking or having sex, we're feeling good. We're able to loosen up a bit and relax, and we're giving ourselves a chance to release, which brings some relief. And however that looks, with the sex, it's a release through orgasm, which brings relief to the body and some relaxation. When we're drinking or doing drugs, it brings a release of that rigidness, because what ends up happening is we become tense and we want to kind of loosen up, and doing drugs or drinking help us to do that and help us to feel good and have a good time for a while. And then of course, once that's over and reality comes back, it's just kind of like, yeah, you're just kind of living through the motions until you have that next opportunity.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing it daily, then you're daily escaping, of course.
And yeah, and I think too, for me, and that's what a lot of studying astrology and human design has helped me, is like understanding. It was like a portal to understanding how I don't need to escape anything in order to deal with like life. That because everything gets so much more intense the more we try to escape that,
Or even try to fix things or change things as they are. And just to be able to come into that place of, like being more of a filter, especially for people. Well, I don't care if you're emotionally defined or not. We can still be filters and not react every time we feel something, emotion coming up, or, we can learn to respond to life. We can learn to sit with these things and accept them. I like looking at them as little children that, I mean, like I could be having a great day and all of a sudden something comes up and it's just like, oh my God, what is going on? I was feeling so good. And it's like, oh yeah, wait, okay. I can accept this in a non-judgmental way. I can accept it as it is. I can love it and transmute it. It just is showing up, because whether it's something in me, which it always is, something within me, but it could have been opened up from something in my environment, from another person's aura, what they're feeling. It doesn't matter. We're all one. Whatever rises at any time can be loved and accepted and transmuted as it is. I mean, if a child comes up to us and they're crabby or not feeling good or whatever, we can either beat that child into submission and it's not going to help it at all, or we can accept it and be non-judgmental about it and love it as best we can. Yeah, it is a little harder when it's actually something right in front of you to do all those things, but it takes practice. And the more that we allow ourselves to do it, the easier it does get.
I love that you compared our emotions to children, because it is like, and that's how we should be. Not should be that word, but that is how we can embrace ourselves and all of those things within us and others too, because really most people are just responding and moving through life as a child because they haven't learned what we're speaking about.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you want to know why that is because when we start drinking and we start doing drugs, our mind maturity stops growing at that time. So like, I'm 50. Do I act and feel 50? Hell no. I mean, I'm just barely 30. I only stopped feeling like a child to my parents at about 47. Okay.
Oh, I'm so glad I'm not alone with that.
It's hilarious. I mean, it's like, so in a way, it's almost like encouraging, but I don't want to encourage people to start drinking or doing drugs in order to stay younger in mind, because we can do that in other ways. But in a way, it's kind of like, okay, so that's the only good side. of it is that I don't feel or act like I'm 50. I see other women, even when I was 30, in my early 30s, and I would see other women, um, and I think, man, they're more like 40. I definitely am not like that. I'm totally different. Is there something wrong with me or what? And it's like, no, actually, it's really cool because I mean, when I see women that are my age and just general normal people that didn't necessarily drink or do drugs and they grew up in, decent families and stuff like that, they generally look, act, and seem and dress and whatever older than I am, you know? And like, I'm going to color my hair. I'm loving the color of your hair. I'm totally going unicorn or something, something
Yes.
fun and different. I want to sleeve myself out. I want to tattoo all over in different cool things and colors and stuff like that. I want to
Get
be
your
painted
human
like a
design
canvas.
chart on there. A tattoo of your
Oh
human
yeah,
design.
right. It would be, if I were going to do my human design chart, it would be an illuminated human
Ooh.
design chart. Yeah, it would
Mm.
be like an illuminated, it would have what I call the primary colors. So to me, the primary colors are a lie that we're taught, or
Okay.
primary colors are not primary colors.
Oh,
Um, and those would be the colors that I would have would be
okay.
more like the colors of, they're like the rainbow colors, but on a very light color, the light, the baby blue, the baby pink, the baby
Right. The
yellow,
pastel.
the pastel, yeah, the more
Yeah.
pastels. And so,
Huh.
yeah, it would be like that type of an illumination because it
Mm.
would be like a, uh, white, it would be like a white, uh, illumination, like it would literally have rays. And then those rays on the tips of the rays would have like those colors because we come from nothingness to the light being emanated out. And then I would incorporate sound in there because it's both light and sound that
Mm-hmm.
actually create, not just light alone, not
Yeah.
just sound alone, the light and the sound. That's why I like the potentiation,
Yes,
because you have the
exactly.
both. And so I would somehow create sound within there, and that would be through like the music scale, some
Mm.
really cool looking music scale type thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I'm creating a tattoo. It's awesome
I
with you.
know. I'm like, you have to do it now.
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, because everything would be, it wouldn't be finite. It would all be very open. There would be no, it would be like the lines would be fluid. It'd be like rivers. The channels would be more like rivers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And instead of having enclosed centers, they would be like rays, center rays, like the
Yeah,
shapes would be rayed out like a sun. You don't have to draw a circle for a sun
like a
type thing. That
prism
would,
because it's like how it works
yes,
through. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So more
Hmm.
like that.
That's so freaking rad. Oh.
Who knows? Maybe I'm going to make a new human design chart. No, I'm kidding.
I am like,
If I do, I
wow.
do. Well, it's going to be a tattoo. It's going to be new. That's for sure. And my nose keeps itching. So, kiss a fool. I love myself so
Oh,
much.
that's so cute. And also, we only have like another like minute left here. So
Okay.
I I feel this is a good one to wrap up, and we probably will have another session to, continue because I feel like, yeah, well, we can always talk more about it, but
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Sounds good
So
to me. Yeah, we'll do another session another time. And this has been totally fun and enjoyable doing this with you today.
yeah, absolutely. It's so fun. Absolutely. I'm so blessed to have you on my journey, and I cannot wait to see what our future unfolds for us.
Yes,
So
totally ditto.
yes,
Rock and roll. It's going to be
I
awesome. Love it.
yes. So very cool. Thank you so much for being my first conversation.
Yay! Well, I am honored to be your first conversation. So awesome sauce and
Very cool. All
have a
righty.
beautiful day.
Yes, you too. We'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.